We're here with Dr. Jay Kinzler of Glen Ellen. He's a candidate for Congress in the Republican primary for the 6th District in Illinois. Welcome, Dr. Kinzler. We're going to ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
The first one I'd like to ask you is please introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for Congress.
Well, Eric, first of all, thanks for inviting me out here, and John, thanks for running the program here. So my name's Dr. Gordon J. Kinzler. I'm a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. I'm also a kidney transplant surgeon. I am not a career politician. I work today, as a matter of fact. I was working, and I do my campaigning, early in the morning and when I have breaks and in the evening hours. And I think that's the way our founding fathers envisioned it. One of the most common questions I get is, why am I running? I'm very concerned that our country is going in a socialist direction. There is a group in Congress now that make up about 65 Democrats, the Democrat Socialists. They're called the Progressive Caucus, and they're taking our country in what I would consider a dangerous direction as far as their socialist agenda. And I think that when our founding fathers first had this great idea called America, they did not believe in the socialism.
President Trump took office with a goal to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. It didn't exactly happen, but the health care law has been stripped of several provisions, and the administration has refused to defend it in court. Mm-hmm. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with?
Yeah, so the Affordable Care Act has been anything but affordable care, and it's been anything but good quality care. One of my most one of the reasons I'm running, or one of the things I'm going to focus on, is healthcare. I do believe that everyone deserves affordable, good quality healthcare. Now, many people in politics now are attorneys, and I have nothing against attorneys. One of my brothers is an attorney, and I love him dearly. However, they've never taken care of a patient in their life. I know from the inside, I know from being the president of the medical staff at Elmhurst Hospital, I know from being the chief of surgery at Elmhurst Hospital, I know from taking care of patients one-on-one, the good things and the problems that we need to do. What the Affordable Care Act did in a nutshell was it took, a lot of people didn't have insurance, but it gave them a piece of paper that says you now have insurance, but they don't necessarily have good care, because of very high deductibles in having a problem at getting in to see their healthcare professionals. I have many guys who, for instance, we follow for cancers, and we used to see them every 6 months, or we see them every year. And a lot of people, because they haven't met their deductibles, and these deductibles have gotten so high, choose to not see me as often. Even though it's against my recommendations, they'll see me every 2 years, every 3 years. Ever since the Affordable Care Act, we're seeing, as physicians, people coming in later on in the stage of their disease process because they're not coming in as often. So one of the things that I would work on would be to repeal that, to answer your question, and basically get a system where we have it very efficient and where we have it cost effective, but where we have excellent quality. And we can do that. There's a lot of waste in the system. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the system. And I know, and if we had about 5 hours, I can start kind of listing all the things I see every day that we need to fix. So I would basically repeal that. The other big issue, and we know that our federal budget is driven by healthcare. So if we can get that in line, that's going to help our deficit. It's going to help our national debt. Our recent budget was $1 trillion in deficit. And we need to get a control of that so that our kids and our grandkids aren't saddled with those huge debts. One of the other big drivers of healthcare costs is prescription drugs, and particularly now generic drugs. When we were younger, you could get a generic drug for pennies, and there are certain things I use in my field in kidney transplant and urology that used to be a penny or 2 pennies a piece for a pill. I have some of these medications now, they're up to $75 for a generic prescription. What's happened is there are companies, there are these hedge fund guys, they go out and they'll find about 4 or 5 companies that sell a generic product. They'll buy all the companies. They purposely close down 3 or 4 of them so that there's only one left. And then guess what they do to the price of that medication? It goes up. That's where the federal government, that's where I would as a legislator step in. I mean, there's things that when you are kind of screwing the average guy or my average constituent, I'm not going to stand for it, no matter what party or what the lobbyists say or what kind of donations come here and there. I'm here as not a career politician for the constituents, and I would pass legislation to stop that.
Excellent. Tell us about another important federal issue for voters in the 6th District and how you would address that issue.
Well, the two other things that I'm going to focus on, one is keeping our community safe and protecting our families. I joined the military at the ripe old age of 49. Other than the day I got married, the happiest day of my life was my last day of officer's basic training. I was 49. Most everybody else was in their 20s, and we got through that. Next thing I knew, I was at Walter Reed, where I've taken care of our guys in 2010, coming back from Afghanistan. I signed up for a 3-year stint, and I've been in ever since. It's been 13 years now that I've been in the Army Reserve, and I go down to Fort Benning whenever they need me, when they're short down there. One of the most important things that I talk to the constituents of 6 about is we need to have a good military, a strong military, because it's the military that protects us all here in our country from all the despots, dictators, socialists, and rogue nations. And so having good protection from external threats is what the U.S. military is all about. I've served under 3 presidents. I started with Bush, then Obama, and now Trump, and I have to say that troop morale is as high as I've ever seen it. The military men and women are getting well taken care of. They're getting reasonable raises, which they never got under Obama. They have good equipment, good supplies, and they have a commander-in-chief that has their back. The other thing that's very important domestically here is we need to respect and support our police, our men in blue, our men and women in blue. We've seen last summer in places like New York where people are squirting or dumping water on police officers. The police are outnumbered. I mean, there's not enough of them compared to all the bad guys out there. The police, to be effective, need the support and they need the backing of their community, particularly community leaders. Lately, I've seen many people, elected officials in higher positions, whether it be mayors in Chicago, state representatives, state senators, they're like disparaging the police in their communities. And then when the leaders are doing it, the masses sometimes follow. They say, well, if our leaders aren't respecting our police, why should we? So one of the other things is I'm going to make sure that we have good respect for our police and support them in their mission. Not to say, we always need to have oversight in things. There's always, a couple bad apples, but in general, we need to support to keep our communities safe. One of my other issues is we need to look into Illinois corruption. Illinois is no longer able to even self-police itself within the state. You've got Mike Madigan, who's at the top of the food chain. His daughter was our top cop, the Attorney General, I believe, for 12 to 16 years, during which time there was no investigations for any political corruption. The guy who's in there now, Kwame Fumi, the month before his election, he got $1 million donation from Mike Madigan. My guess is he's not going to have a lot of incentive to do a lot of investigation on him. What is happening, though, that we're seeing, and I would like to see more of it, is investigation from the federal level. And we're starting to see things with Sandoval going to jail. Cullerton is now under indictment, the Cullerton nephew. And we're starting to see even some Republican mayors in Oak Brook Terrace now with that red light scam. And all this stuff is being triggered from the federal level. And I would continue that to fight political corruption here in Illinois.
Okay. The last time that this seat was contested, the state and local tax cap exemption that was included in President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that capped the exemption for the state and local taxes at $10,000. That was a real hot button issue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with the way that state and local tax exemption cap is set now? And if not, would you work to?
No, I think it's really fair for our constituents. I mean, our constituents, especially in Congressional District 6, I mean, this is one of the hardest working group of people that you're going to find anywhere in the country, in the United States. I mean, These guys get up at 5 in the morning, they work all day, they go home at night, and they probably work at home. And basically, I think it was very unfair just because we have terrible Democrat control in this state that we were penalized for that. So I would be in favor, and I think I would be able to have the ear of the president, and I would get the ear of my colleagues in the Senate and in the House, and basically see if we can get that exemption increased to help some of the people who are kind of suffering without having that deduction. Now, that's going to be one priority as a legislator that I'll have. We also, though, need to do things in support lowering our income tax and lowering our property taxes. As you guys know, because you live here, we're paying the highest property taxes in the entire United States, barring none. And we're soon to probably going to be paying one of the highest income taxes if this progressive tax goes through. California did a progressive tax hike, and they said, oh, don't worry, it's only going to affect 1% of the 3%. Well, I've lived in California when I did part of my transplant training at USC, and I was living, I would consider at the poverty level, and I was paying about 9% taxes then, because what they do is, once you open up the Constitution to allow them to start putting in different tax brackets, they can start lowering that down to as far as they need to go down as far as income levels, and raise those rates to whatever they want. And I think that will be very dangerous, again, with this one-party control rule here in Illinois.
So Congress has been criticized for failing to deliver meaningful reforms to our immigration system. What is your position on immigration, and what reforms do you support, if any?
So we do have to definitely do some immigration reform, and probably the number of candidates you've had in here, probably the number you've heard say, yeah, we need to do something about it. Here's my plan. I have kind of a global plan. And by the way, I've been going not only to the Republican organizations and the conservative organizations, but in the last week, I've been at 2 mosques, a Hindu temple, I've been at a Chinese American event, and I work regularly with the Korean Americans. I have had one opponent in this upcoming race who's been at that with me, and it wasn't my primary opponent, it was Sean Casten. And for us to have a good representation of people in Congressional District 6, we have to be able to reach out to not just the standard, 35% conservative base. We need to engage the whole district. And basically that's what I plan on doing. What's the question again?
What reforms do you support to the U.S. immigration system?
So I basically think we have to somehow find a path for citizenship for our people in DACA. There's no way we can send all those kids back. I mean, these kids came when they were 2 years old. They've been in our school system. This country is the only country they need. And by the way, many of them I've served with in the military. They're paying taxes. They're hardworking people. The average illegal immigrant, though, according to a recent study, costs the U.S. taxpayer $14,000 more per year than they bring in taxes and other products with the amount of social service they need. So here would be my proposal. We need to somehow strengthen the southern barrier. We need to have a southern barrier to help stop the migration of illegal immigration at our southern border. And it doesn't have to be a complete wall, but it needs to be a barrier that's effective. We need to basically start having local law enforcement help with the immigration problems. In other words, I don't believe in sanctuary cities and sanctuary towns. I mean, we're all Americans. We all live under the same Constitution and the same group of laws. Everybody needs to kind of chip in to help with this problem. And then if we can do that and stop the, just the unfettered illegal immigration process, then I would couple that with a DACA program. So, but if you just do it 2 separately, you're just going to have more people coming over. You're going to have the caravans coming because they're going to say, hey, once we get here, then we're set. And it's just gotten very difficult for the average American to support the amount of illegal immigration that we have. We need to be humane. I'm a physician. I got a sensibility for that. We need to take care of people, which, you know, I do. Half the work I do, I don't even get reimbursed for. I mean, so it's not all that. It's just basically having an orderly system. It's like if you go somewhere and you stand in line and then somebody else comes and cuts in front of you, it's not right. And we need to get that in a more orderly fashion.
Okay. Well, how about, you know, the candidates in this race are both pretty impressive, I must say. I mean, obviously you're an accomplished physician.
Thank you.
And Jeannie Ives she's been to West Point. You know, she's been in the state legislature. What makes you the best qualified to face Sean Casten in November?
So let's break it down to let's talk first about my primary, and then we'll talk about the general. Why does someone out there watching this, why should they vote for Jay Kinzler? There's one reason. We need to take the seat back from the Democrats, and I have the best chance to win. I've been endorsed already by the Sun-Times, by the Daily Herald, and they came to those same conclusions. I am a unifier, not a divider. We need basically somebody that could not just get the 35% of the vote of the right-wing conservative Republicans, but we need somebody that can reach out to people who are more in the middle, and again, not compromising their values, but basically have somebody who is who's inclusive and is more of a unifier than a divider. I challenge anyone to Google my name and Google my opponent's name and put in a derogatory term of your choice, and you'll see the difference of what comes up. My opponent has said some terrible things in her career. She's also voted on some terrible legislation. Those things are going to come back to haunt her in the general election, and I think it's going to be very difficult, if almost impossible, for her to beat our Democrat opponent. So otherwise, you know, we line up with many of other similarities, but you know, I'm not a career politician. I work for a living. I would consider myself a working legislator, a citizen legislator, somebody who comes, does this for a short time, and then leaves and have somebody else go. That's the way our founding fathers have had it intended, and I would go by that. I think it's very good to not have people who are career politicians. I would favor and I would vote for and I would sponsor legislation for term limits, including my own. I think that there's many other people that could rotate in and do a fine job representing the people of Congressional District 6. As far as my opponent in November, should I win the primary election, the big difference from me and him is our backgrounds. He was born in this country. I believe he was born in Ireland. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in free markets, strong military, secure borders, basically supporting our law enforcement, lower taxes, balanced budgets. I think socialism has not worked. I know him and many in his caucus think that this is a way to go. When we look at things, I just finished reading Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag. 10 million Russians, perished thanks to, socialist agendas. And people say, well, that's the difference between socialism and communism. Karl Marx quotes, the first way to get any nation or society from liberty, free markets, and open markets is to first go to socialism and then to communism. And that's something that I'm definitely opposed to. I feel I have a better feel for Congressional District 6, and I would better represent the majority of the members in Congressional District 6, but I would also represent everyone else because, again, I'm a little more inclusive, and I have contacts throughout my professional career with people from all walks of life. I used to be the president of Glen Ellen Park District, and there were 6 Democrats on the board with me. I was the only Republican. And, we didn't agree on national politics, but we were able over a 2-year period to lower the property tax levy for the Park District by 33%. And by doing that and working together, we, I think really benefited our constituents.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just appreciate the time and you know, the election's March 17th, which is in only about 10 days. It's pretty easy to vote. You can pretty much vote at any municipal center between now and then. I think the voter turnout's probably going to be relatively low, so it'll be the motivated people that get out and vote to have their voice heard. I think I have the best chance for victory in November, and I ask for your vote, and I ask for your support, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.